All right, everybody, welcome to a day late, dollar short edition of Under the Dome. Things were going on last week. Last night, I should say, that I was not able to make the show. So this is going to be kind of a surprise. Look, Calvin's already in here. Just got my tickets to watch game one. There you go. But yeah, sometimes the real world kind of comes into play. So I couldn't make the show last night. Sean can't make the show tonight because he is working, but you still have Bob Rose and I. So I'm your host, Alan Orrick, here with Bob. How's it going tonight, Bob?
Alan, I'm doing pretty well. We just got our power back on literally about 10 minutes ago. I thought I was going to have to do the show in the dark, with candlelight behind me. But we lucked out. So y'all get to see my rapidly aging face for another week.
What happened? How come you lost power?
Unlike down there, the electric companies up here cannot deal with 2 straight days of 90-degree weather. And all of a sudden you get all kinds of power flicks and power outages. Literally half our house went out. The air conditioning was still on, and we had lights, I think, in the kitchen and the bathroom. But that was it. So as far as I was concerned, that was the important rooms got covered.
So you're gonna do the show from the bathroom? Got it.
Right.
Well, at least you got a place to sit. So I know you want to do a couple of shout outs before we get started. So go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, the third of our 3 amigos, Sean Williams, his wonderful son, Andrew, just turned 10. I believe it was Monday, if I'm not mistaken. It was either Monday or over the weekend. So Andrew, if you're watching, happy birthday from both of us. I miss playing catch with you, but I need you to stop getting older, my man. You get older, we get older. Speaking of getting older, my beautiful daughter Isabella, the second of my 3 children, turned 17 on Monday. So far, I've dodged the bullet of of another kid with a driver's license or learner's permit, but I'm not sure how much longer I'm gonna avoid that one. She just took our dog outside, so I think she heard the happy birthday wishes on her way out the door. And last, but certainly not least, a young friend of ours, we hope to convert him into a Saints fan. London Reeler turned 6 years old over the weekend, I do believe. At London, if you're watching, happy Who Dat birthday. From a couple of older guys who have been covering the Saints nationally for a long time. So I hope this shout out makes your birthday a little bit more special. I know it might not have been the best birthday in the world, but any birthday is a good one, and you'll have plenty of great ones. So happy birthday, London.
Absolutely, happy birthday to all of you, and then Jerry as well.
Yes, happy birthday, Jerry.
Sorry, we were on the show last night to wish you happy birthday on your birthday, but like I said, real world comes in sometimes. I have a new boss, and the old boss was bringing him out to meet with me and another buyer. So we went out to dinner last night afterwards, and good guy, really good guy. I'm looking forward to working with him. So but that's in the real world. Okay, so the good news is we actually have had 2 days of the mandatory mini camp in the books. And evidently Marcus Davenport is going to have a good season because he is trying to emulate Ronnie Lott already, had part of his pinky amputated, much like Ronnie Lott did, except Ronnie Lott had it done during a game and came back out there.
Ronnie Lott, that was crazy, and I hated the team, every team he played for as a matter of fact, but Ronnie Lott was one of my favorite safeties to watch. If he was in a neutral uniform, he might have been one of my favorite players of all time.
Absolutely.
The story on Davenport, he originally hurt his hand, his left hand, specifically the pinky finger on his left hand. in 2016 or 2017 in college. It never really healed properly, and I guess there was all kinds of ligament damage. So Marcus Davenport made the decision to have the top part of his left pinky finger completely amputated. And as it is, Davenport wasn't expected to be out onto the field for these mini camp practices. Dennis Allen and the trainers and Davenport are all saying, because he's dealing with a shoulder injury too, a reoccurring issue with him, but that he should be ready for training camp.
I'm not about to put even in the same realm as having part of your pinky amputated, but your ring finger, my ring finger in this hand here, this isn't even when I was playing real football. This is playground football. And I went to
this is when our worst injuries occur.
Yeah. I went to play, I was playing tackle football, for the playground, and I got my fingernail caught in the guy's face mask around where the bolt is. And I split my fingernail and I ripped 3/4 of the way off. Ooh. So it was just hanging there.
Oh.
And I had to finish the job because you can't just reattach that.
Right.
So, that is probably one of the most painful things I ever had happen to me in a football field. That includes screwing up my knee.
Well, and I've had some football injuries too. All my worst injuries occurred on the volleyball court, where where I had a much more productive and longer career. But I was a setter for indoor teams, outdoor 2-man, doubles volleyball. You do everything. But you look, and Alan, you've met me many times, so you know how messed up my hands are. My fingers are all messed up. A nice firm handshake, with my right hand, my wrist will actually pop out of place. I don't feel it, but it usually freaks out the person whose hand I'm shaking, and they'll recoil and ask me if I'm okay. And I just say, I shake my head and I laugh and I say, it's just part of getting older.
Yeah, that's what it is. I don't get the snap, crackle, pop in knees anymore like I used to. I probably have too much fat now between my knees, so that kind of acts as the cushion now. But it's always fun. But so Davenport's recovering from shoulder surgery and part of his pinky being amputated. Michael Thomas is running, but he's not participating in practice. He's rehabbing. Right. A few other players are kind of rehabbing too. Do you remember which other ones I've missed? Because I think there's a few others.
Andrus Peat has been, first of all, it's great news because all the players are there. And even the injured ones that are rehabbing, they have been out onto the field, on the field with their teammates and on the sidelines, encouraging them. Calvin, that's crazy.
But you made the play, so that's good.
Yeah. But all the injured players have been physically present at the facility, not just at the facilities, but on the sidelines. But Andrus Peat is another one who hasn't been practicing. He will be a full go for training camp, it looks like. Jameis Winston has been throwing and participating in a lot of the drills, but when they go 11 on 11, Jameis takes a step back. Payton Turner, and this one concerns me a little bit because of what Turner dealt with last year. Payton Turner also has not been practicing. You don't want, Mr. Turner, you don't want to get the stigma of an injury-plagued player. We already have one-star defensive end that deals with that stigma. This team is going to need all hands on deck as soon as possible. Listen, I'm not concerned if a player misses minicamp practices. I'm not even concerned if they're a little bit limited going into training camp. But a player as young as Turner, who really is unproven up to this point in his career, that's starting to become a concern to me. Other than that, JT Gray and Alontae Taylor had a collision on the field today that had JT shaken up a little bit. But after meeting with trainers, he was back on the sidelines, looking pretty well. So I think he just got his bell rung. I think that gets you all caught up on the injury front.
Yeah, and you got to remember these guys are in shorts and shells, so if he had pads on, he probably would have bounced right off of that hit. but
Yeah.
you don't have any padding on right there, so you're just colliding with people. Yeah, somebody asked me one day about concussion. Speaking of getting your bell rung, and they asked me,
I've had 6.
I've had 3 that I know of.
That right.
Yeah, because
the folks back in Alan's and Maya and Sean's day, if he were here, and I know Sean's had a few too, it was someone's best guess whether you had a concussion or not. If you've ever seen any of the old, I think they were Snickers commercials, on the sideline, where a football player got his bell rung, and they asked you 3 basic questions: what's your name, where are you, and what day of the week it is. If you got 2 of those 3 questions answered right, and you could walk a straight line, you were back into the game.
Yeah, they give you smelling salts. Yeah, so 2 of them were accidents of my own making. Well, all 3 were accidents of my own making, but 2 of them were accidents. One was playing football. So one of them, I fell down the side of a mountain. And my parents hadn't even unpacked the car yet. And I think I've told this story on the show before, but I got a scar above either this eyebrow or this one. I don't know which one it is. I know when I see it in the mirror. So we were in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and you're going up the mountain, and the roads, of course, go around like that. Well, this particular chalet was into the side of the mountain, so the parking lot where you park is what we consider the top of the chalet. That's where you walk in, and you go downstairs to the actual living room area and stuff like that. And you overlook the valley and everything, so it's really nice. And this was, mid 70s, late 70s. We went there for Thanksgiving. Well, as soon as we get there, I got hiking boots on. They were New Orleans hiking boots. They were not hiking boots, but they had, the traction and all the other stuff. And they had this trail that ran down the side of the chalet, down the mountain to like the main road. And you could walk and investigate because it was a park we were in. Well, the trail kind of took you a long way to get to this thing. And, me at 10 years old, shortest distance between 2 points of a straight line. So I'm going to go straight down the side of this mountain to catch the trail because I'm not walking all that long way for nothing.
Right.
So I'm going down, and about halfway down, I'm doing the smart thing. I'm going sideways. I'm not walking straight down. Well, the ground gives way as I'm going down, so I go head over heels down the bottom to the ravine and smack my head on the side of a rock at the base and split my forehead. Well, this was in my eyebrow at the time because I was only 10, but split my forehead right there. My parents are still unloading the car. And the kids all, because we went there with 2 other families, all come running. Mr. Allen, Miss Diane, Allen just fell down the side of a mountain. They're like, what? And so, and I had a concussion, I don't remember anything else the rest of that day, and they're talking to me and trying, don't fall asleep. Don't go to sleep and stuff, and I'm just like out of it, and they kind of put some butterfly bandages and said, we probably should have got stitches for that, but we just stopped the bleeding and put that on there. And, so for the rest of it was Thanksgiving, the rest of that trip, you look at me and I got this bandage over my eyes. So, yeah.
Well, hell yeah. I mean, it's vacation. It's a holiday. The show got to go on.
That's right. So yeah, that was me. And then the second time I was like, I don't know, 4, 5 years old that I know of that, that I think that's how old I was. Anyway, it had rained and my parents are saying goodbye to some friends, and there's a driveway that had been sealed. So it's super slick. And I'm like, oh, you could slide in this thing like it's ice. Yeah, smart move. So I go like I'm sliding to third base, but I'm just kind of like skating across it. Well, my feet kick out from underneath me, and I bang my head on that. So off to Oxner, and your son got a concussion. And then the last one that I know of, I was probably about the same time, maybe 77, 78. And we're doing the Oklahoma drill in playground football. And there was one kid who was the running back on the team, and he liked to lower his helmet into like a battering ram,
Mhm.
because he was going to knock you down. He was running over everybody. So we're doing the Oklahoma drill, and I'm in one lane. For those of you who don't know, Oklahoma drill is one guy's got the ball. He comes running at you. You got to tackle him.
Yep.
Okay. And then you switch sides, and you have the ball, and somebody has to tackle you. Supposed to teach you tackling practice. We're 10 years old. We're going to learn how to tackle this way. So I'm sitting in line, and I'm looking over, I'm counting, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to be matched up with that running back. I'll be damned if he's going to run over me. So here we come. I'm lined up, and I was a little kid, so I'm lined up like this, and here he comes, helmet down, ready to ram it into your chest like Earl Campbell versus Isaiah Robinson. Except this Isaiah Robinson lowers his helmet and is going to meet you head on. Pow! You hear that plastic that those old helmets hit. I fall back, and the coaches all loving it. Oh, yeah, listen to those helmets. Because, of course, back then, we don't realize, we're cheering brain damage for 10-year-olds.
Right.
But, that's a hit. That's a hit. Way to hit. And I am literally seeing stars and butterflies like a cartoon character and birds chirping because I don't know where I am. And they're like, oh, look at that guy. They both got that bell, and he got his bell rung, too. So, yeah. So that's the 3 concussions I know of. That doesn't count me flipping my bike a half dozen times and tearing the hell out of my skin. So the way they take care of players today is so much better because they know so much more. Obviously, I mean, back then we had no idea. When you call it getting a bell rung, that's exactly what they thought it was. It was just you're getting a wake up. You take a smelling salt and go out there and play. In fact, I've told this story before too, but Bobby Hebert, that happened to him in 1989 versus Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He had gotten knocked out of the game, and he knocked his front teeth out too. And John Forcade had to come in, and Forcade gets hurt. They did something else that's illegal, clothesline tackle out of bounds. They grab him. A horse collar tackle, grab him by the back of the jersey and get the shoulder pads and bend him backwards as he's trying to run out of bounds and bends his knee back and hurts his knee so he can't go back in. There was only 2 quarterbacks on the team back then. Hebert had to go back in and play with a concussion, has no memory of the game. Dalton Hilliard's calling the plays. The offensive lineman, Paul Boudreaux, says, I don't care if you get a holding call in every play. No one touch Hebert because you'll kill him, And Hebert has no memory of that thing. So, that's just the difference in the game back then compared to today. We've had some players in this training camp that have kind of stood out. Granted, shorts and shells, like I keep saying, but who has been Mr. June for you, Bob?
Bryce Thompson, second year defensive back from Tennessee. I know the Saints really like him anyway because they found a way to stash him on the practice squad last year as an undrafted rookie. He was a cornerback at Tennessee, but is in the process of converting to more towards a traditional safety. And John Hendricks, our guy with boots on the ground, that's been at all these Saints OTAs and minicamp practices so far. He raves about him too. Listen, Bryce has an uphill climb to make this team. You got to figure, PJ Williams probably, then definitely Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Marcus May, Tyrann Mathieu, or locks. That's 4 spots. Usually the Saints keep 5 safeties. I project they'll keep 6, but even at that, you're talking about Bryce having to compete with Justin Evans, Daniel Sorensen, JT Gray, who's a special teams ace. Yet through all this, Dennis Allen has even mentioned Bryce Thompson's name a couple of times. He has been a standout in coverage, despite being undersized, because again, he's a converted corner. Despite him being a little bit undersized, he's moving well in traffic along the line of scrimmage. So yeah, defensively has been Bryce Thompson so far, hands down. Offensively, it's the names you'd expect. Jarvis Landry, Chris Olave, they're making the one-handed catches and dazzling the onlookers. Not much of an opportunity yet. I mean, a couple backup linemen, have stood out. And Donald, you're right, Caden Ellis has also been mentioned a couple times as having some strong practices. But yeah, offensively, outside of Kirk Merritt, Calvin, and that's a good call out. But again, Kirk is a wide receiver. He's not going to make this roster. Those positions are pretty much set, injury aside, or weird trades or something like that. But yeah, Kirk Merritt has been a player that's made an early impression that has you thinking at this point, okay, he's probably not going to make the team, but he has practice squad guy written on him.
Kirk Merritt, the interesting thing about him is he's just ran high school kid. So, I don't think my wife taught him. Maybe she did, but she knows him and knows the family and things like that. So, yeah, it's kind of exciting to see a local kid getting a shot with the Saints, and he may be a practice squad player. We don't know yet, but yeah, he's a wide receiver, and he had a nice catch to end either minicamp or OTAs. I'm not sure which one it was, but it was just the other day. So I think it was OTAs. He ended that one, and yeah, he's going to be. That's going to be a fun kid to watch. I hope he gets to practice all the way through training camp and playing some preseason games, because I'd like to see him out there playing. Yeah, and the names that you mentioned, the only other player I see who's getting mentioned right now is the punter, the punter they brought in. I'm trying to remember his name now.
Yeah, I know who you mean. I don't have it in front of me either, though.
Yeah, I'm looking it up here and see. This was put together. My little list here was put together a while back. Daniel Whelan from Cal Davis. Yeah, Daniel Whelan. He's I don't think he's a threat really to the Saints punter, because I thought he had a great year last year, Blake Gilligan. But I do think he is an interesting player to watch in camp, because that could be somebody they try and stash in the practice squad. Could be somebody that they make, kind of maybe dangle as trade bait. So yeah, it's it's interesting to watch, to hear them talk about yet another punter. And the Saints have spent a lot of time upgrading their special teams. They've done this for several years now. Sean Payton's really made an effort to emphasize special teams, and I think that's carried over now to Dennis Allen's regime. I don't know if that would even make a difference with Trey Kwan right now. I don't know if Trey Kwan's going to make this team.
Yeah, he's a bubble player. First of all, Trey Kwan's been standing out at practice too, but he always has. It's when the games count for real that Mr. Smith pulls his disappearing act.
Until a nationally televised game,
right?
Like except
for one nationally televised game a year.
Yeah.
But you got to figure Michael Thomas, Chris Olave, Jarvis Landry, Deontay Hardy are going to be 4 locks. That means it's coming down to Marquez Callaway or Trey Kwan Smith.
Yeah.
I think that that Marquez Callaway is a much better route runner. He's a threat on all 3 levels, unlike Trey Kwan Smith. Marquez Callaway can and has gotten separation, certainly consistently so, against 3rd and 4th corners. Is when they matched him up against the top corner that he had problems last year. Trey Kwan hasn't even done that.
Yeah.
I put him very much on the bubble. And I saw someone mention Aesop Winston. I'm a huge Aesop Winston fan. Don't forget about K1 Baker, their 6th or 7th round draft pick last year that they had stashed on the practice squad. There's going to be a lot of competition for not necessarily roster spots, but practice squad spots, training camp reps. So there's going to be a veteran that gets lost in the shuffle here. It's inevitable. Yeah, and we joke about Trey Kwan Smith being traded for a container of Pez or something like that. I've said publicly that I'd help him pack his bags and drive him to the airport. But, no joking aside, do not be surprised if the Saints swing a deal and manage to trade either Callaway or Trey Kwan sometime in the maybe first couple days of training camp. Now, folks, it won't be for much. It'll be a day 3 pick, a conditional day 3 pick, probably. That's what you usually see for these kind of players. But yeah, Trey Kwan and Callaway, one of them are likely to be the odd man out.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at probably 6 receivers making this roster with 5 active on game day.
Right.
And Hardy probably the primary kick returner. If, and we're assuming Rashid Shaheed isn't going to make the team. I mean, so there's just so many. The bottom half of the roster is the challenge here with the receiving core. What can you do in special teams? What can you do in the running game? What can you do when you're not catching the ball? Because that's really what we're going to be looking to see. Can you be active for us on game day? That you can be somebody that, we'll throw you a couple passes a la Austin Carr or someone like that.
Right.
But for the most part, your job is going to be running down special teams, making tackles, and running clear out routes and blocking for the running backs.
Yep.
So Donald mentioned Andy Dalton has looked good so far. I mean, Andy Dalton's is a pro. He knows what he needs to do out there. So this is Dalton is probably the most reliable backup you've had for this team since, probably Mark Brunell. As far as somebody who can come in and start a few games, not really be a challenge to your starter. Somebody said something to the effect of, if Andy Dalton starts 4 or 5 games for the Saints and the Saints are in trouble, I don't think that's the case at all. I think Andy Dalton could start if let's just say worst case scenario, and Winston's other knee gets blown out, about the same time, about game 5. I think Dalton could start the rest of the season, and you still have a good shot of winning. This is you're not having a Trevor Siemian kind of player. You're not having Taysom Hill at quarterback. You have a guy who could probably come in and do some stuff, not get you beat, probably be a better version of Teddy Bridgewater, essentially.
That's a pretty accurate analysis, and I've said in articles that Dalton still has the capability to dissect a defense at least through the intermediate routes if he's given the right protection. I don't want Andy Dalton starting for my team for an entire year, but believe you me, you could do worse.
Yeah, Luke McCown probably. Yeah, I forget about Luke, but Luke is probably another good one. I was just thinking about a veteran starter who has played in a lot of games, and Brunell and Dalton both fit in that category. I agree with that. If Dalton starts 4 or 5 games for the Saints win 4 or 5 games, and that's pretty much how I feel. Chase Daniels, no. Daniels has never started a game. It's unbelievable. He's really never started a game in the entire. I think his entire career. Maybe he started 3 games.
I think he started 2 or 3, in a stint with the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that he was with the Chiefs in between his 2 stints with the Saints. But no, Chase Daniel was nothing more than a backup and an extra set of eyes on the sideline for the starter.
Yeah, I mean the thing about Dalton's going to be prepared. Dalton can run this kind of offense where he doesn't have to really push the ball downfield. It can be a vertical. I mean, it can be a horizontal passing attack where he's throwing to the backs. He's throwing to, quick passes to the receivers, emphasizing yards after the catch. And then if he has to let one loose, he can let 1 or 2 loose. But he doesn't have to throw the ball deep 10, 15 times a game. the situations he was in Dallas and last year with the Bears. I mean, you're really talking about teams that were in chaos, especially the Bears. Um, the fans wanted Justin Fields to take over. They wanted to see him out there. So any mistake, and then Nagy was not a good coach. So any mistakes they were going to make, it just reemphasized the fans wanting Justin Fields out there.
Yeah.
So he is in the decline of his career. He is in the backside of his career, but I think he can start a few games. Yeah. Mark Brunell had a good career, and I don't know if he's one of the best. I mean, there's two guys named Steve Young and Kenny Stabler who probably make a pretty good argument that they were the best, but I would say he was one of the better left-handed quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yeah, I'd put him third behind behind Young and Stabler. Now there's quite a bit of in my opinion, there's quite a bit of drop off between Young, Stabler, then Brunell. But Brunell was a dangerous weapon in his prime, and people forget. And Drew Brees has talked about this many times. People forget what a veteran stabilizing influence that Brunell had on Brees on the sidelines, because you're talking about especially then an extremely fiery coach on game day in Sean Payton, and Brunell provided a buffer, a friend, a confidant, a guy who's been there, done that, seen this, done that for Brees. That's what kind of influence that Andy Dalton is going to be on Jameis Winston.
Yeah, you're going back in time there. Yeah, he was a backup for Brett Favre. I mean, you're going back to the days of Ty Detmer. That's when the Packers seemed to be sending out all their backups to be starters.
Yeah.
Them and the 49ers, Brunell left the Packers to go start for the Jaguars way back when. And I think that helps out in the quarterback room too. You've got because Ian Book, he's still a kid learning. And Jameis Winston, he is your starter, but you need that veteran guy, like you said, been there, done that, seen it all, and can sit in that quarterback room and just make the calls on things. And Book can just soak that in.
Yeah.
Book can just listen to these two quarterbacks talk about what they see, how they see it, and Dalton's got playoff experience. So that's huge. I mean, granted, he didn't win much because we're talking about, Cincinnati and, but he still, he has done the playoff chase before. He can, when things get really, because every team faces this, and this is what Sean Payton seemed to thrive on. But when adversity comes in, a guy like Dalton, who's dealt with adversity a lot in his career, can be the calming influence in the quarterback room. That listen, just do one play at a time. We run the game as per the game plan. We just do what we do best, and things will work out. Get patient. Don't try and win the game in one play. And I think that's when Winston was with Tampa. If there was a major weakness for him at Tampa, it was the lack of that. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick, yes, he was a veteran quarterback, but he was never a starter, long-term starter. And there's something to be said of having a long-term starter there with you who has been the face of the franchise, has been the focal point of the media, and can handle the adversity and say, these are the things that happened during the season. This is how you would handle it. This is how we handled it. When I was at Cincinnati and the pressure was on us because we were playing the Steelers and we don't beat the Steelers very often, that kind of thing. So, yeah. Yes, they did. AJ Green, Dalton Green was a good one. And so was, Sanu.
Yeah.
Sanu was a good one. And Jameis is 28. You're right. He was only 28. There's a lot to to take in on the quarterback room. So I'd expect Andy Dalton to have a good camp. Ian Book seems to be maturing a little bit more, at least in these things. He's not going to. He's no threat for the starting job right now.
Mhm.
But we wanted to see, is there going to be progression on this? Because a lot of people felt like, hey, he was a wasted draft pick. Oh, there was one of Sean's little pet projects that's not going to make this team. It's time to move on because, for some people, if you're not a starter, you're not really on this team.
Right.
I mean, we don't have 45 starters on game day, but apparently for some Saints fans, that's the only way you field a team. You have 45 starters. But whatever. What have you heard about Ian Book?
I've heard that exact thing. That he's shown a lot of maturity, a lot better comfort in the offense. At least in shorts and shells. Listen, Ian Book is going to be fighting for a roster job. There's no guarantee that the Saints are going to keep 3 quarterbacks, especially if you're going to carry Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton in to the regular season. Obviously, if something happens to them, you have that guy wearing number 7 that's going to be listed as a tight end that you could move back to a quarterback if you absolutely positively had to. Therefore, Ian Book is certainly not guaranteed a roster spot. This team does not have to carry 3 quarterbacks and probably won't carry 3 active quarterbacks on game day. So, Ian Book, I felt bad for Ian last year. Because Sean Payton really should have named Jameis Winston the unquestioned starter in minicamp. Everybody knew what was going to happen, but he wanted to. Some backroom promises were made, and Taysom Hill was given supposedly a legitimate chance at winning the quarterback job. What that did for Ian is take valuable reps away from him, not only in preseason, but in training camp practices. Now Ian Book is going to be given a chance because Jameis is still going to be recovering from knee surgery. What, as you said before, Alan, what you got in Dalton. So even though he needs to get familiar in the offense too, you can and probably will give more reps to Ian Book, and he's going to have to show people a lot. Thus far early on, and take this with a grain of salt, Dennis Allen and Pete Carmichael have both talked about how noticeably more comfortable that the Book is looking in their offense thus far. We'll see if that continues to carry over, though.
Absolutely. And I knew the Book was going to be a project. And that was what I kept saying last year when people wanted Book to come and start. I'm like, you don't need Book to start. You don't need Book to play at all. Let him hit the weight room. Let him drink in this offense and learn what's going on. And from that point on, it's going to be, okay, how does he look this preseason compared to last preseason? And that's how you measure his progression. I mean, you mentioned Taysom Hill, and a lot of people have, are critical of Taysom Hill's quarterback performance, but I saw a progression in Taysom Hill's game from when he first showed up on the Saints in that first preseason to last year. Did he look like a starting quarterback? No, but he looked like a guy who could play quarterback and looked like a guy who can come in and do some stuff for you at quarterback. But compared to how he looked when he first got to the Saints, there's a big difference. The biggest negative to Taysom's game right now is really his age. If he was 21 or 22 as opposed to 31 and 32, you would take more time and invest in this kid and let him see what he looks like at 28.
I think so too.
I think that's the biggest negative you have on Taysom right now. This whole idea he can't throw a ball, he is a Tim Tebow, that's just lazy analysis because Tim Tebow really couldn't throw the ball. Tim Tebow had more in common with Danny Werfel than he had with Taysom Hill from his passing mechanics. Okay. So, I just think that's lazy analysis. He's not really a tight end. He's an F back or an H back, depending on your offense. He's the kind of guy that he can do what he does on the team. He's that slash player. He's just
Yeah.
not, and I think that's what why Dennis Allen has him listed as a tight end, because like we had said on the show before, Allen's looking out there at the field at what's going on, and he's thinking, I got a hell of a weapon standing right next to me who can't go in because he's got to be my healthy quarterback if something happens to Trevor Siemian. I don't need that. I don't need him standing on the sideline next to me, because if Winston gets hurt, that's who I got to go to. I need him out there doing stuff. I need him out there rushing the punter or playing the up back so I can fake a punt or short yardage, running up the field. He needs all that, and that's what he's doing right now. So,
yeah, and if there's a criticism that I had of Sean Payton the last 2 years, it's exactly that. As a coach myself, I'm a big believer in. I mean, it's coaching 101 in my opinion. You have your best players, you have your best athletes on the field. And the last 2 years, Sean Payton really didn't do that with Taysom Hill, because again, and maybe they were backroom promises. I don't know. We'll never know. But Sean wanted to give Taysom a fair shot, or some kind of legitimate shot at a quarterback position. As a result, I mean, in 2020, you're not going to sit him for Drew Brees. No. And in 2021, he was told you're going to be given a fair shot to beat out Jameis Winston. But all that over the last 2 years, and it did a disservice to Taysom Hill too, in my opinion, because it did keep his versatility and athleticism on the sidelines. It completely eliminated from special teams duties altogether. And I don't care what position they list Taysom Hill at now, as long as it's not a quarterback, he's going to be a benefit to the team.
Yeah, and I still think, and we've said this before too, I still think he will come in for short yardage to run those RPOs. He will throw occasionally out of that, because otherwise it's not going to work. People are going to say, oh, Taysom Hill's in, and here comes a running play.
Right.
You got to throw the ball a couple times out of that formation. But it'll be short passes, or it might be, if the play is just set up perfectly, a wide open play like the halfback option kind of pass. Mm-hmm. Real quick. So Donald mentioned Mario Davis looked good in practice. I expect that. That's just a given. That's like saying Sam Mills, Vaughn Johnson, Ricky Jackson, right. Pat Swilling look good in practice. And Pete Werner's having a pretty good camp. It's a mini camp, but he's looked pretty good. But the Saints have not brought back Quan Alexander. Instead, they brought back or letting a guy try out Schobert. Is it Joe Schobert?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I know he played for the Steelers. He's kind of bounced around the league a little bit. I think he played for the Jets too.
It started with the Browns. Actually, the bulk of his career, I think 5 years with the Browns, 1 with the Jaguars, and then last year with the Steelers.
It was the Jaguars. Jets, Jaguars. What's the difference?
Right.
But tell me a little bit about him. What kind of linebacker is this? Because he's doing a tryout. He's not actually signed. He's trying out in this camp.
Yeah, exactly. And he's one of 3 prominent names that the Saints have brought in for minicamp tryouts. Have not signed yet. We'll get into the other names in a minute. Schobert's a guy. He's an in the box linebacker, and I think 2 years ago he had a career high 3 interceptions. That was an anomaly. Definitely an exception to the rule. Joe Schobert is not a guy. He's a slightly more athletic AJ Klein. He is absolutely not a guy you want in man-to-man coverage whatsoever. He has good awareness in zones, hence the pass breakups and interceptions that he's put out statistically. But more so, he's a guy that you want on early downs in the box against the run. He has great awareness. He sifts through blocks and sheds blocks real well, and has a nose for the ball carrier. He's a 100 tackle a year guy. Matter of fact, I think he's had 4 or 5, 6 seasons of 100 tackles or close to it. But again, he's not a guy that you want in open space. So if a guy like Joe Schobert is on your team, if the Saints sign a Joe Schobert, Schobert, when he's in the lineup, he'll be in the middle. They'll have Demario Davis and Pete Werner on either side flanking him, in spots where Davis or Werner are more apt to be guys in coverage, and Schobert's going to be your straightforward guy. Very, very similar to Eric Wilson, the veteran that formerly of the Vikings and last year with the Eagles, that the Saints signed about a week or so after the draft. So now, Schobert, like you said, Alan, Schobert's the second veteran that they brought in, along with drafting DeMarco Jackson in lieu of signing Quan Alexander. You got to believe that this team, and I love Quan, I do, I want him back on the team, but you got to believe, just based off of those actions, that the Saints feel pretty confident about who they have pegged as their coverage linebackers, which are Demario, Werner, and seeing how DeMarco Jackson develops. And using Caden Ellis, Eric Wilson, and potentially Joe Schobert, if he is indeed signed, as your run guys, as your in the box guys.
Yeah, I find it interesting that they seem to be bringing in a lot of guys instead of Quan. I always thought that, okay, they knew Quan was always going to be out there, that they would bring him in if,
right,
during training camp, once they got to see some of these young guys. But it seems like they were just bringing in guys right now to see, Quan's out there, but we're going to try these other guys first and see what we got with these guys, because we know what we have at Quan. And that tells me that maybe they see Quan near the end of his career right now, that he's probably played on borrowed time, and they started seeing him slow down towards the end of the season, and we just didn't notice this. So I don't know, and I'm just speculating.
Boy, I'll tell you something though, and I have said that Quan statistically had the best numbers of his career if you project that out to a whole season, which he's only played once in his career.
Yeah,
but in hindsight, when I think about it, they had Quan rushing the passer a lot more than we've ever seen him do any of his stops throughout his career. They didn't have Quan in coverage nearly as often. We saw those duties go to Demario Davis or Pete Werner over Quan. So maybe there is something dead on with what you're saying, because when an athletic guy starts to tail off, and we saw Troy Polamalu is a great example in Pittsburgh. When he started to decline, that decline came very rapidly and made him a liability very, very quickly. So maybe, possibly, the Saints see this same kind of tail off happening with Quan Alexander.
Yeah, it's possible. It is very possible. So one of the other guys they brought in for a training camp tryout is David Johnson. And no, he has not been signed. He is strictly on a tryout. So how do you see David Johnson playing out? I mean, I feel like David Johnson's probably I'm looking up right now. He is in his eighth year. Yeah, 8th year. He's 30, but his knees are closer to 60.
Yeah.
How do you see David Johnson? Do you see him making this team?
No, I don't. I don't blame the Saints for bringing him in for a tryout to see what he has. Very similar to what they did with Devontae Freeman last year. It wouldn't even surprise me if the Saints signed David Johnson to take into training camp like they did with Devontae Freeman last year. But I see that same end result coming. And really, if you look at Johnson's 7 years in the league so far, you throw out one because he missed with injury, and you certainly allow that with everybody. But outside of 2016, people call 2016 Johnson's breakout year. And statistically, it was a great year. He had over 1,200 yards rushing, 80 catches, over almost 900 yards receiving, and 20 touchdowns. That wasn't his breakout year, though. That was his flash in the pan year. He has done really nothing since. In 2018, he had 800 or 900 yards rushing and like 50 catches for about 500 yards. That was the anomaly. He has been is averaged under 4 yards a carry very consistently since that 16 season. And, I know, people are going to argue, well, Arizona Cardinals, who he started with, they didn't like to run the ball. Well, they did when David Johnson was there. Houston Texans, they just have an awful team. Also true, but Johnson didn't make them any better. Running backs, supposedly, great running backs and even good running backs are supposed to make your team better or at least more dangerous. David Johnson did not do that. And I know, the Saints aren't necessarily looking for a star back, but as Alan and I, have said many times, if they bring in a veteran back, it's because they expect Alvin Kamara to be facing a multiple game suspension. So you're going to need a running back that's able to carry the load for those multiple games. I just don't see that with David Johnson, not at this stage. Really ever. Like I said, to me, that 2016 year, as great as it was not a breakout year. It was a flash in the pan, a one-hit wonder.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of these guys. Mark Ingram's entering his 12th season. I think part of the reason why they like David Johnson is he's got size to him too.
Sure.
So they're looking for it. It tells me they're looking for a complimentary back as well, not a Alvin Kamara replacement.
Mm-hmm.
Just really a complimentary back who's going to be able to run between the tackles and move the pile. And it's somebody if Kamara's out, they think they can probably win with a running back by committee with some power running backs. And Ingram can still catch the screen passes.
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't have much confidence. I don't think Johnson's going to get signed, honestly. I think that's going to be one of these guys that are going to feel like, he's out there, and we could, if we need to bring somebody in, we could try and bring him in.
Mm-hmm.
But I really think that if they're going to make a move, if they really feel like Kamara's going to be suspended, they're probably going to make a trade.
Agreed.
And trade for somebody that shines in training camp. So, you got to watch some of these guys that are playing on teams that have some depth at running back.
Yes.
Because they're going to want somebody fairly cheap too.
And it makes the most sense too. If you're Dennis Allen or Pete Carmichael, because it gives a chance for Abram Smith, your undrafted rookie, and a couple more undrafted guys, but young guys, and Tony Jones and Divine Ozigbo. It allows you to give them the reps, so that way exactly what you have in any of those three, if and when the Kamara suspension comes down. And if one or two of those guys really start to stand out, you don't even have to make a move potentially for another back, because you have a breakout from one of those guys, and you have a very reliable guy in Ingram.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I totally agree with that. So, one other guy that's trying to make a tryout for the Saints is an old friend of ours. Clemente is trying to come back to the team. I was just looking it up. Oh, by the way,
is it out?
Yes, it is out. This is the 36th edition. And I was just thinking back. I've been buying this magazine now, the Lindy Sports Pro Football Preview, since, God, it's got to be the Dome Patrol years. So, this is issue 36. I probably still have issue 4 or 5 as the first one that I bought.
I'm not far off of that. I know for a fact, because I remember buying them on the road, midway, partway through the beach volleyball season, when we'd be traveling, something to read in the car or in the travels. Lindy's Football Guide is the best out there.
Absolutely. It's one of the few that are left.
Right.
I remember the days you had Athlon Sports, Pro Football Weekly. God, I had so many of them I bought at the time.
I had them all. Yeah,
it's pre-internet days. But I was just thinking about that because I can remember mine that had Jim Everett on the cover. I had Wade Wilson on one cover in 93. I think Athlon Sports 1991 was the first one I bought of all the football preview magazines, because it had all 4 members of the Dome Patrol on it. and I still have that one. But this one here, Lindy Sports, I've been getting them since at least issues the volume 5 or 6, one of the first ones that came out.
Nice.
Street and Smith too. That's another one that
Yes.
used to be out. Um, but yeah, and what I've always loved about it is you go to your team, and it's always written by, somebody who's your beat writer.
Hmm.
So Sheldon Mickles used to write a lot of them. This one's written by Jeff Duncan. I've seen Mike Triplett write them and stuff like that.
Yep.
But this, I don't know if y'all can see this or not, but this is the part
Maybe
I
I'll get
always
to
like.
that point someday.
Yeah, I would love it if you do. But this is the part I really like, where they break down player by player
Yep.
the Saints roster. And
Yep.
that's what's always hooked me onto this thing because,
Same.
I like reading what they have to say about each player. And, old Jim Everett, who's a friend of ours on the show here, in 95, the Lindy Sports Preview magazine just had Jim Everett is the man in block capital letters because he had such a good season. So yeah, it was fun. It's fun. All my Lindy, I have them all because I don't throw shit away. My wife drives my wife crazy, but I've got them all. And the I can't tell you how many of these covers had Drew Brees every year. Everyone had this. This one's got Alvin Kamara. I think last year had Kamara. But outside of Brees, that's all you ever saw in these covers. It was always a quarterback. I'll go dig out one of my earliest ones and I'll show y'all once I finish unpacking everything. Yeah, I used to read Sporting News too. That was a pretty good magazine. Pro Football Weekly was probably my second favorite behind Lindy.
I'd agree. I like that one.
When Joel Bushbaum was still alive, that was a really good magazine. It really broke down the teams really well once Joel passed away. And Joel is if you ever have an opportunity, you should read some of the stories about Joel Bushbaum. He had to have been autistic because he was a hermit, didn't go out very much, and he just started hanging around football practices like a reporter, and he would go into his apartment and start writing these analysis, looking at film and things like that, writing his analysis and stuff. He basically created Pro Football Weekly magazine out of this, just doing these things. And, people, he was a mystery guy. Who is this guy? Who is he? And he was right about so much. And he kind of became the football guru. And one of the things and the reason why I bring him up is he listed one time the 10 worst trades in the history of the NFL draft. And this is kind of a Mel Kiper thing. Mel Kiper was the same kind of guy he was the first one to put out a sports draft book. No one was doing this. He found a market, and that's how he made a name for himself. Joel Bushbaum started doing this kind of stuff. Nobody was doing these kind of things. They were just basically covering football, for their own market. Nobody was really covering the league. Not like this. And he did his top 10 worst draft trades. And this is before, because he passed away, not around the time the Ricky Williams trade happened. But in his top 10 list was the trade the Saints made for where they traded the number 2 overall pick in the 73 draft to the Baltimore Colts. So the Colts could select Burt Jones, and the Saints got a defensive end and a 4th-round pick for it. And defensive end, he was okay, but not worth the number 2 overall. This is not Ed Too Tall Jones. This is not Randy White. You're not trading for or Mean Joe Green or L.C. Greenwood. You're not trading for that caliber of a player. You traded for a guy. His name was Newsome, Billy Newsome, came from the Baltimore Colts. Billy Newsome, and he lasted the Saints one season. Saints traded him to the Jets in '75 for a 1st-round pick, but Bushbaum listed as one of the worst trades ever because that second round pick, and this was long before the Jimmy Johnson draft chart, but that
Mhm.
second round pick had so much value given that. I mean, that first round pick had so much value given that trade that you got nothing for it. You didn't even get a first round pick. You got absolutely nothing out of that. And that's why he said it was one of the worst trades he'd ever seen. So he's an interesting. I encourage everybody. His name is Joel Bushbaum. Google his name and start reading about him. And if you're not sure how to spell his name, go ahead and do Pro Football Weekly Joel Bushbaum, and it'll pop up. Believe me, you'll see it. And yeah, great guy. Very strange character, but a great guy. Yeah, he never left his Brooklyn apartment. He started he had film sent to him, draft film and stuff like that sent to him. He just started doing his thing, with typewriter and just turn these articles in. It's amazing. The internet, he would have loved the internet.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah, you're already going to the smoking man, so we know what time it is. Last thing then, because tomorrow will be the last day of Saints football until the end of July.
Yep.
When the rookies show up first and the veterans come in. And then we will have football Saints news all the way through the middle of January, because it's still a 17-week season. Even if they don't make the playoffs, we're still talking about Saints football well into the second week of January.
Hey, listen, I try to put out content every day, but there are days I feel like I'm reaching a little bit.
Well, it's going to get to that point when it comes to coming up with ideas for the show the next 4 weeks, or 6 weeks, actually. So what are you looking for to see in this training camp? What are you hoping to see happens within the first couple of days of this training camp before the first practice?
Yeah, first and foremost, health. You don't want any of your players, especially your top players, to go down with freak injuries, and we see it throughout the league every year. Secondly, you got to have how quickly the rookies are going to make an impact at the top of your list. The Saints have 2 first-round draft choices. One or both are projected to be at least competing for a starting spot. They need to live up to those expectations and do so quickly. The day 3 picks, even Alontae Taylor, the second-round pick, they could come along a little bit more slowly, but the quicker they develop, the better. And then nextly, how fast are Jarvis Landry, Tyrann Mathieu, Marcus May, Contavious Street? How quickly are they going to make an impact? Outside of that, all eyes got to be on Michael Thomas, right? We keep hearing he's going to be a full go for training camp. I don't see a reason why he won't. But until training camp, you can't believe it until it actually happens.
Right.
So when it happens, how well is Can't Guard Mike going to be moving? Is he going to be making those deadly efficient route cuts like we're so used to seeing? So those are the kind of things that I'm going to be looking for. Once training camp begins, tomorrow mini camp again. The stars are going to put on a show just like they always do. I also like the fact that Dennis Allen, just like Sean Payton was before him, seems to have a very organized approach to his practices. It's a very no nonsense approach. And the players have embraced that. And this team, even though Drew Brees is gone, Malcolm Jenkins is gone, Quan Alexander is seemingly gone, this team still has a lot of veteran leadership to keep those guys in line too.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things I want to see out of the Saints is good health. Going to the training camp, I want no Saints players to make the news after Thursday. I don't want to hear about a single Saints player in the news, because that is nothing but bad news. That means somebody got arrested, somebody did something stupid, or somebody got hurt. So that's the only reason why you'd hear Saints player news from Friday until the beginning of training camp. Yeah, that's probably the two biggest things I want to hear. Yeah, I want silence about players, and I just want to see them come to training camp ready to go, healthy and ready to go. And I'm worried about the leadership. I like hearing what I've been hearing about the leadership on this team because you've lost. Malcolm Jenkins really organized that secondary. Drew Brees, of course, was the unquestioned leader on the offense. So uh, in that chaos, and then that Sean Payton gone. In that chaos of last season, I felt Sean Payton really was able to keep that team focused. And I don't
Yeah.
know how that's going to play out. So far, it looks like Dennis Allen has been groomed very well
Mm-hmm.
and learned a lot of lessons from Peyton on how to run a team. Let's see what happens when adversity hits. Let's see what
Yep.
happens when this team has to deal with a challenge like, God forbid, a spate of injuries or a big losing streak or something like that. How does this team respond? The guys I like in training camp, Donald. Mini camp so far. It's all the same guys that a lot of people talk about. I like seeing what I've seen out of Jarvis Landry. Chris Olave looks like the real deal. I'm a little concerned, but not that concerned that Trevor Penning hasn't looked that great. It is shorts and shells. I think when this dude puts on the helmets and shoulder pads, that's going to be the equivalent of Popeye opening the spinach can,
I agree.
or David Banner getting the green eyes from the Incredible Hulk. I'm aging myself with two references to two TV shows, but I think that's what you kind of see. You're going to see a different human being once the pads are on. I expect at least one fight a week with pads
Yeah.
on, and Penning somehow being involved in that. Chauncey Gardner Johnson. I did see that interview. Chauncey Gardner Johnson. Again, he's one of those guys that you love having him on your team. You would hate to have to play him every week.
Yep.
I know. I've seen this before too. The Avalanche. I got a little car that rides around River Ridge where I live. It's a little mini, but it's colored like the Avalanche, the Colorado Avalanche hockey team, and it's got a huge A on the back. The logo is the whole back window. So yeah, this is clearly an Avalanche fan, but he rides around. Yeah, and Will Lutz coming back. That's really good news too. I expect
For sure.
that. I expect that back, and I think the key for him is just the consistency. Let's see that
Mm-hmm.
consistency again. But that's really what I'm looking forward to coming into training camp from this mini camp. Let's just see these guys take care of themselves, stay out of trouble. Don't go to the bars. If you're going to go to the bars, get a damn Uber. Don't fight and don't hurt yourself. I sound like Booker T. Justice. You can think about it, but don't do it.
Do it.
Real quick, last thing. Have you seen Top Gun Maverick yet?
I have not. I'm going to, but I have not.
I really recommend this film. I know, people make political things out of it. It's a non-political movie. It really is. There's nothing political about it. I like it because it's a sequel. It's a 36-year in the making sequel, kind of. It's very real about Maverick is older. He is not, this is not Maverick from 1986 Top Gun. This is Maverick from in 2020, even though the film was made in 2018, the 2022 Maverick, the realities of dealing with being an older pilot and the realities of being in a very different world than he was in 1986, technology wise. It's a really, really enjoyable movie. It is what summer films used to be. And that's what really, and I'll tell you from the outset, it starts off when you sit in that theater and that movie starts, you swear you're sitting there getting ready to watch Top Gun again.
Nice.
I mean, the music's the same. The the F-18 is taken off from an aircraft carrier. It's still Harold Faltermeyer's, sound, and it kicks in the danger zone.
Nice.
And then it takes you to the present day. But there's a lot of nods to those of us who saw that movie in 1986 as an 18-year-old, 20-year-old. Me, I was 19, almost, I was 19, 18 turning 19 that summer. So first year of college, my first summer in college, so it was good. But it was a great it's a great movie to watch because you really feel like these are people. They didn't change it. The other thing is too, and I'm not going to ruin the movie for anybody, but they didn't remake Top Gun with another character, this time with Maverick being Viper, which was one of my fears. No, he's not Viper. He's not even Jester. He, Michael Ironside, who always plays the asshole in every movie he's ever been in. Michael Ironside is like, if I'm casting a movie and I'm like, okay, I want a guy who everyone in the audience is going to hate, but they're going to love seeing him on screen. That's Michael Ironside. Mm-hmm. That's the exact character he was. You think about him in Total Recall, which is another one of my favorite movies with Arnold Schwarzenegger, where he's supposed to be married to what's her name now? From Total Basic Instinct, the blonde,
Sharon Stone.
Sharon Stone. He's supposed to be married to Sharon Stone, and his wife is for. I'm not ruining this movie for anybody, because if you haven't seen Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger now, it's been 30 years. You need to go see it. But his wife is supposed to be Michael Ironside's real wife in the movie, but she's playing an agent, as this agent is supposed to be Schwarzenegger's wife, as Schwarzenegger pretending to be somebody else with his memory wiped and that whole bit. So you're always questioning what's the real memory, what's not. But one of my favorite lines is, he says, "Yeah, I bet you can't wait for your wife to get back with him again." Talking about Schwarzenegger, and he's like, "Are you saying she enjoyed it?" And the guy turns to Ironside and says, "No, I'm sure she hated every minute of screwing him." Just had that look on his face. That just pissed him off even more. So it was just a great movie. It was a great movie at the time. So, but going back to Top Gun, that's what makes the movie enjoyable, is that they actually took the time to create a plot that works for characters that are 36 years older, and that pays homage to the movie without remaking the movie, and introduces new characters in it without shoehorning some kind of political message or some kind of way of remaking the old film, which was my biggest fear. So yes, Val Kilmer is sick for real.
He is.
Val Kilmer does make an appearance in the movie. He really is sick. I think they used some CGI on him.
They did.
Not to make him look as bad as he really does look in real life. He really can't speak. So yeah. I did not see the remake of Total Recall because it's hard for me to watch to watch remakes of films from the 80s, because there's something about those films. They're so mindless. And Top Gun isn't mindless. Top Gun's just enjoyable. But some of those movies that Schwarzenegger made was so mindless that if you try and make a serious movie out of this, it just doesn't work for me. Total Recall was just enjoyable because he was just so unrealistic. Ronnie Cox playing as such a great villain and all that stuff. It's like remaking Running Man. You just can't do it. It's did they use Val Kilmer's son's voice? I did not know that. I can believe they did. I did not know that. Yeah. Tom Cruise, I think they used a little CGI on him, because he does, in the very beginning of the movie, before the movie actually starts, he makes them. And again, the movie's made in 2018. This is a 2022 clip at the beginning where Tom Cruise thanks the audience for coming to see the movie. And it's really nice touch. And
Cool.
he looks a lot older than he did even in the movie. But again, I encourage everybody to see it just because it is a fun movie. This is what summer movies used to be like. This is why you went and saw movies in the summertime. You were looking forward to these big, spectacular events on the screen, and the fighter jet stuff he tells you too, not CGI. These are real jets, real pilots flying these things. Real, and it's really impressive what they do. So yeah, a lot of fun. Yeah, I watched it last Saturday. Oh, Eraser? You just saw Eraser this weekend? Wow. Eraser was one of the last good Schwarzenegger films I saw.
You guys got to see. You guys got to see the Expendable movies, at least 1 and 3.
Yeah,
because all of them were '80s action heroes,
mm-hmm.
And they all made fun of each other with different lines that they stole from their '80s roles.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything more than that. Take Expendables as a typical Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. They're just they're mindless action, but I promise you, especially 1 and 3 will make you laugh.
Running Man. When you watch Running Man, take a good look who's in that film. Jesse the Body Ventura is in that film. Jim Brown is in that film. Mick Fleetwood of Fleetwood Mac, the drummer, is in that film. Yeah, he plays the leader of the Resistance. That's Mick Fleetwood.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's what's fun to watch about that film. And of course, their idea of the future, I think the year was 2013 or 2017. It's something like that. Something obviously the time has actually passed.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes it even more fun. Yeah, and the Expendables, I haven't watched the Expendables. That's probably one I really need to watch. Every so often I get on and it's terrible. I know it's bad, but I'll watch them anyway. I'll go and watch. There's only 4 Steven Seagal films that are worth watching. 4 of them: Above the Law,
yes.
Out for Justice,
yes,
Under Siege, and
Hard to Kill. Hard to Kill was my favorite.
Hard to Kill. I mean, the sheetrock that can catch bullets, and then the canvas top with the Jeep that they shoot the hell out of it and doesn't hit any of them.
Yeah,
that's my 2 things. But I enjoy those. Those are the 4 films that are worth watching. Above the Law has Pam Grier in it. From the old blaxploitation films, those of you who don't know what I'm talking about movies like Shaft, movies like the Pam Grier was in a ton of them, where she plays like some woman shooting up the ghetto, with names like Foxy Brown and stuff like that. But she's in that film. Hard to Kill had his real wife in it, who played, if I remember right, didn't she was Brock, or I can't think of her first name, but she also plays the girl in Weird Science, doesn't she? She does. Yes. Kelly Brock, or I think his name was. Out for Justice. That's got the actor who played Lenny in Law and Order, and also Baby's daddy in Dirty Dancing. And he did the voice of Lumiere, the candlestick in Beauty and the Beast. That's him. That's him singing. But Jerry Orbach, he plays it's captain, Steven Seagal's captain. And my favorite part is Steven Seagal tells his captain, it's a murder in his own neighborhood. Look, I can fix this. All I need is an unmarked police car and a shotgun. And Orbach not only agrees with him and says, okay, gets him the car and loads the shotgun for him and hands him this. And that's how he's going to fix this problem. So that's why there's so much fun. And of course, Under Siege, that's filmed on the USS Alabama. Gary Busey's in it, so any movie with Gary Busey playing a psycho is always fun, and so is what's his? I can't think of his name now. Too, I just drew a blank. I could picture him. He was in The Fugitive. He was in um, come on, man. He was Al Gore's roommate in college. Come on, you can think of who it is. But yeah, he plays the guy tracking Harrison Ford in The Fugitive. So it's a good one. Mark for Death. I really have a hard time with Mark for Death, mainly because it was so predictable. I mean, yeah, they're all mindless. Shoot 'em up. Watch Steven Seagal twist and break somebody's arm in a way that you did not think was humanly possible, But I don't know. I just didn't like the idea of the guy obviously having a twin brother. And if I've ruined the movie for you, I'm sorry. So it's just there's a lot of fun. Yes, and it's funny. Tom Cruise is also in another movie coming out later this summer, Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, which is supposed to be the solution. Yeah, and it's part 1. So there's going to be a part 2. So he's in 2 more movies coming up. So anyway, that's my summer movie reading list so far. Thor's coming out, Love and War. I'm not looking at the. I don't know. I'm tired of. I don't. There's something about going on with Marvel right now that I just can't. I can't put my finger on it, other than the fact that I'm somebody who's read comic books for way too long, and I know where these stories are coming from. These story ideas are coming from, and I don't like the way they're doing it on the screen. I know if they did a comic book movie the way I would do it, had people like going, "This is stupid. Why would you watch this? I'm not watching. This is dumb." But the way a comic book is told, you can tell a story over a year, and in a movie, you can only tell it in 2 hours. So you don't get that character development, that the subtle. I'm gonna use, since you're smoking, that cigarette burn effect of a story of a cigarette sitting in the ashtray, watching it burn. That's how long that story will take to tell the right way, which is why X-Men, and of course I'm going way off the rails here now, but X-Men, anytime they try and do the Dark Phoenix story, they can't do it, because in the comic book world, that took 3 years to tell that story and set that up. So it was so dramatic how it ended. You can't do that in a movie. No one's going to sit and watch a 9-part movie to build that story up. They're just not going to do it. I don't know how many Mission Impossible movies is it like, this is like number 5 or 6? It's almost like, I think Fast and Furious. Yeah, Fast and Furious is the only one challenging that. So, yeah. One day, this is what we're going to have to talk about for the next couple of weeks, is movies and stuff like that, because there ain't going to be much Saints news, hopefully. In the meantime, Bob's already on his second cigarette, so I know I'm keeping him up late. For the Smoky Man tonight, Bob, for Sean, who is not with us tonight, but will be with us next week, and for me, I want everybody to enjoy their Wednesday night. I got to go finish laundry. Oh wow, my son's name is Logan from the X-Men. Oh, here we go.
Donald, stop it.
Yeah, DC comic book guy. I like DC as well. I didn't see the new Batman movie. People still watching Fast and Furious because they'll watch a 9-part movie. Maybe. You got to have some flashy stuff in it to keep people interested. It's hard to keep the actors together too for that long of a movie. So, and anyway, in the meantime, thank you guys for joining us. I have not watched Stranger Things. I have a lot of people trying to suck me into that. I haven't watched that. Logan James, you should have called him Logan Scott. Really set it off. Scott Summers and Logan, that whole battle. So in the meantime, I did not name my kids after any Star Wars characters or any Marvel comic book characters, which is amazing, unless you count Matthew. maybe Matt Murdock, Daredevil. That's about as close as you're going to get. I did name one of my kids after a president, Reagan, but that was it. Anyway, in the meantime, thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.
Not all.